it's a beautiful parallel, big wave riding and big mountain riding. And one of the coolest components of it is that I think any big wave surfer that you ask which is gnarlier, I seem to hear, like, without a doubt, that they think big mountain riding is gnarlier. Now, if you were to ask all of the big mountain riders which is gnarlier, I would say that the vast majority will say that the big wave riding is gnarlier.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Buoy Report podcast, where we are documenting waves of energy, from big waves to renewable energy waves, thought waves, and mind waves. Hope you enjoy. Aloha.
Carry on.
Sir, thank you for coming up the country to Maui.
Pleasure to be here, Mr. Lopez.
Sitting here with Mr. Rice. It is mid-October 2022, preseason on Maui. We're up country Maui. What are you doing on Maui?
Yeah, well, you know, the last, I guess, 4 years or so, coming over here and like training with you and, you know, your squad basically here on the North Shore, you know, big wave and wind, like enthusiasts. I love it because you guys all take it so serious. As you roll into, you know, big wave season and the energy starts to pulse here on the North Shore. And I first rolled over, you know, I'm good friends with Ian Walsh and, you know, learned about you guys' program with like Sam Campbell and Deep to Peak. And yeah, it's a great program. And, you know, this is, I think, year 4 or year 5 coming over here. And I love it. My lady, she lived here for a year. I've, you know, spent time in Maui on the past, and for me, the ocean and the mountains like complement each other so well. And if I can go into winter with like a little bit of a tan, I feel like I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's a really good energy in that space. Yeah, it's cool. Let's do a quick intro. The who, what's, and whys. So we kind of did why you're here, but who are you? Professional snowboarder. I saw just a quote just now, or it was one of their advertisement for the National Geographic show you got going on, but Jimmy Chin called it an elite adventure athlete. You're circus ringleader of your national selection, event promoter, coordinator, businessman, anything else? Like, what a little title, one word titles would just sum you up? Athlete, obviously.
Reckless optimist.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things have been, I love getting myself into fields that will teach you a lot.
Gotcha.
And, you know, experience is the greatest educator. And, you know, through snowboarding, ultimately, I'm a professional snowboarder, but, you know, snowboarding has kind of been this vehicle that's exposed me to, you know, so much in this world. And I have a tendency to say yes and follow the path that, you know, gets presented. And it's been super fun. I get to do so much in the like periphery of what initially started kind of from snowboarding.
Gotcha. The one I think I left off the list, movie maker.
Yeah.
How many have you got to your credit so far?
Films.
Besides all the little edits.
Well, like, you know, films or like legit short films, you know, probably, I don't know, 7 to 12, depending on what you would classify as you know, as a legitimate film. And then, you know, I don't know, probably been in 25, 30 films over the years. And in the beginning, you know, the first 5-7 years that I was doing it, I just asked a lot of questions, and I made sure that I was a part of like the, you know, post-production, going and visiting, at the time, like Justin Hostenick and Absinthe Films. He was a smart guy because he would go and edit in the summertime, and his whole thing was, okay, where in the lower 48, because I need access to shipping and a few other components, I can't be in exotic location, where can I, you know, edit that has the most consistent like south swell. And so the Absinthe crew, we would always go to Poipu Beach and Quiet, on the South Shore. So that was like my first exposure to Hawaii as well. But yeah, asking questions, learning about the art of filmmaking. That was like my favorite class in high school. I took like 4 years of TV production, and we were able to like, you know, check out cameras, shoulder mount, you know, DV tape and full VHS cassette tape cameras. And the TV teacher we had was the guy was such a G that he, you know, knowingly just like let us check the cameras out and go make snowboard films.
No shit.
Yeah. So
where's those all edits sitting at?
They're collecting dust. They probably need to be digitized because, you know, those tapes, they break down over time. But maybe they're just getting a nice little vintage look.
Lightly coming in.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the filmmaking was one of the main reasons I really wanted to talk to you, and the movie Fourth Phase. And you had some nuggets of what the path that I was on and the path that I was digging at and really curious. And if I can read one of them, and actually let's circle back. I really wanted what the Buoy Report stands for, and what we're looking for is on the energy side and frequency and vibration. So a quote from Nikola Tesla: "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." In physics, and this is not Nikola's text, in physics, the definition of energy is that which allows work to be done. Frequency is how quickly does something vibrate, and then the law of conservation of energy. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It only can be converted from one form to another. As such, the total energy in this universe remains constant. This is called the law of conservation of energy. The loss of energy of one system is exactly equal to the gain of energy of the other system. This law is true for all situations and for all kinds of transformations. So the more I've looked at that and understood it, the more I see it's one of those laws that's just everywhere on a macro level to a micro level. And you guys hit it on the head in your guys' film, and I think it was you're probably scratching your own curiosity. And so I'm going to read a quote now straight from your movie. So the ocean traps the sun's heat energy and turns it into a solar engine, the North Pacific Gyre. It just distributes the heat energy around the planet.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Let's just start picking at that thread, and I got a couple more things.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, the fourth phase. You know, the fourth phase was something that after a series of other films, like we kind of worked our way into both being, you know, prepared to take on a project like that, and also earn the trust to raise the funds to make a film like that. You know, I think a lot of my life, a lot of the projects that I've gotten myself into, from, you know, filmmaking in this film to like the natural selection where we are right now, is, you know, you have to start small, and, you know, you work through, you make mistakes, you learn, and, you know, if you come out of it and try to glean a little wisdom from previous experiences, you find yourself in a better place to take that next step and evolve your craft, or, you know, whatever it is. And the fourth phase was really, you know, we had probably 4 or 5 films that we had done, you know, leading up to the fourth phase. And the fourth phase also was a bit more of a project that was a little bit more my project, like taking the creative and like directorial lead and like the subject matter and the narrative. And this was the first film that we actually attempted to make like a full, like 3-act story structure film. You know, not just like a, you know, docu-adventure film, where it was actually, you know, learning about story structure. And so what kind of led into that was, you know, I had been sailing for, I guess, 4 years or something on a sailboat that I had worked hard to purchase, and it was in the Atlantic at the time. And one of the guys who I grew up like really having a lot of respect for, he was kind of a mentor to me in snowboarding and beyond that, metaphorically in life as well, Brian Iguchi.
Yeah.
And Brian Iguchi, he's very well spoken. He's an artist. He's a poet. And he had written this poem that I'll kind of sum up because it's a little bit of a longer poem, but it kind of circled back around to this.
I actually wrote it down if you want to.
Yeah.
You want to read it? Yeah, I can read it.
I mean, the whole poem's beautiful. Yeah. If you got the whole poem.
I wrote it. So I'll probably read it because I got some serious chicken scratches. So
Sweet.
Brian Iguchi's poem. Water evaporates, clouds form, life begins. A snowstorm
Atop high
peaks, falls heavy, settles, melts. I'm going to start this again. Brian Iguchi's poem. Water evaporates, clouds form, life begins. A snowstorm atop high peaks, falls heavy, settles, melts. Flows through tributaries, streams into rivers, then finds the sea and returns to the air. This process we follow, the cycle we ride.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And so this process we follow, the cycle we ride, was really like the fundamental like motivator to start this like truly ambitious project with, and so where we live in Jackson Hole, like we live on the Continental Divide, essentially. Yeah. And so we're at the kind of furthest reaches of this reciprocating system that is the North Pacific. Yeah. And in looking at areas that we were interested in, had ridden, and were looking to learn more about, areas like Kamchatka or the Kuril Islands south of there, the Aleutian Islands. You dive in, we dove into learning about the gyres and the North Pacific gyre and like what causes it. And the goal of the film really was to try to draw this deeper connection to these environments that we go work, learn, play, and experience in. I'm a hungry, avid surfer, playing the rivers, and there's kind of this migration around the energy of winter, where we get and for us it's like playing in the same storms that collide with the Northwest that you guys are riding Jaws and Mavericks and stuff from, and being able to try to connect that story with going and actually feeling and experiencing it on all fronts. And I think it was kind of this like poetic, more of a coincidence really, that, on average, water in the North Pacific takes roughly 3 years to do one cycle. Oh, wow. And that was basically the time we had to film that movie, was 3 years as well. We were going to travel it in a rotational manner and had Mike Horn's sailboat Pangea booked out to do like the first year trip, sailing north from Japan through the Kurils.
That would have been nuts.
It was incredible, yeah.
Would have been some rough seas though, with the storms.
Oh, our crew was tripping. When we first told them what we were doing, there was definitely some cold feet, and sailing into the freaking North Pacific in wintertime, like, yeah, that's some
crab boat shit.
Exactly.
And there's times when those guys run back to that shelter harbor.
Yeah, indeed. It would have been rough. I mean, I wish we could have done it. Maybe we'll still be able to do it someday. But look, the premise of the film was really taking a good look at where the water goes, and I think to a deeper level, just trying to present like education in a way that was a little more exciting and fun, and something that had application in people's day-to-day life and thinking. Because for me too, right, like growing up in Jackson, like the snow comes and the snow melts away. Yeah. And I didn't really think too much about where, how, because it was these big complex systems that I didn't understand. And so trying to sum up, this big, complicated, inner workings of, the great aerial ocean that flows over, Earth and the movement of water into like something simple that was more digestible was like our goal.
That's interesting. That's like that. It's so dynamic. It's like, it's so three-dimensional, right? It's not just, it's linear, it's time, it's energy and heat from the bottom of the ocean to the upper atmosphere, and all those molecules cycling through X, Y, and Z. So.
Yeah, I mean, it even like that term, like great aerial ocean, I came across that term, and its big, reason for being was like, dude, we oversimplify way too much by just, it's the atmosphere. It's like so much more complex than that.
The simplification of that is crazy, and the actual how complicated, how connected everything is, and bringing that to front of mind was good on you guys. Like the old Hawaiian systems, are you familiar with Ahupua'a, how the land division here? So they essentially used to divide the land into the villages and land rulers. It was mountain to sea, and it was pie wedges based on the valleys. And they knew that the clouds up top and the streams dictated the health of the river mouth and the ocean all the way out to the big pelagics. And they understood that from the rain clouds to the taro fields to the streams to the health of that stream to the water flow.
It's about that water.
And that's what I was telling you about the other day in the water rights over here now, and just how some of the water harvesting here on the island has had such a negative effect.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, how
they knew it back then.
Yeah, I mean, simple wisdom when you step back and take a like holistic look at it, where it might not make sense to give control to the upper part of that pie, to one party when
you throw a dead pig at the top, and it just piss in the river upstream. It's gonna
interesting.
I think outdoor folk in general, whether it's snowboarding or hunting or surfing, is so much more tuned into the cycles of seasons. It's crazy. I can lie in my bed and like I got a couple trees that I look at and just know what the weather's doing, and the cloud I peak looking out the ocean and all stuff, and how and then you can expand that out. My uncle told me back in the day, the old surf forecast they used to have when they knew the big swells were coming for pipeline, the big west swells coming across the Pacific, was he had his friend in Tokyo would call him and say, hey, it's snowing in Tokyo, get ready. Not just like if it's snowing in Tokyo, that's a proper storm that's gotten all the way down to the city.
So like give it 5 days a week or something.
Yeah, like it's still sitting there. It's going to have to come off the land and come into the Pacific side and do its spin. So it's going to have to spin for a couple of days, and then it's got
because I think it only snows in Tokyo really like a couple times a winter.
Yeah, and that's the big storms, and that was the that was like when I first started boat driving in Tavarua. The other surf forecast we'd have was the guys in Raglan would call up Tavarua. It's huge here at Raglan. Get ready. It's coming up the coast.
4 or 5 days later in the south.
It's coming up the chute.
Sweet.
And the other one I've noticed, this is a funny one, when we really started paying attention to Jaws, and I think this was probably about 7-8 years ago. It was maybe one of the El Nino seasons, and it was one of the concepts that was going around in the news. They were calling polar vortexes. Every time they'd call a polar vortex, when that cold air would come down out of the Great Lakes and hit the Northwest, I'd be like, we're going to get a swell in 2 weeks. Watch. And we saw a couple, and then by the end of that winter, I was calling, we're going to get a storm in 2 weeks or so. And sure as shit, it would happen. So the polar vortex would blast this cold air down. It would come across, it would run into the hot air coming in out of the Caribbean, turn into a big nor'easter, low Pacific out of the Atlantic. That would send swell to Nazaré would get a huge swell, and Europe would get a massive swell off of that storm. That same blast of cold air energy would spin across all the way across Europe and Asia and pop out in the Pacific and make a big storm.
That's amazing.
Anyway, by then I was like, it's connected. Here we go. It's coming in. It's just this supercharge of, and who knows whether it was probably a heat blast that actually pushed up the bubble to the North Pacific.
Yeah, like what initiated the vortex?
Heat pushed up, and then some cold air got pushed down.
I know. It's when you start to look at those like macro systems, it's fascinating. And I think that's one of the beauties of like surfing, and especially taking, like you and a lot of your, peers, when you dive in because you want to know more, understand how it works, just like in, in snowboarding, like, you kind of have to become a bit of a like climatologist. You have to understand, you have to become a hydrologist to a certain level to better understand and predict for, being where you need to be ready on the day when the day comes. And through that, you self-educate. And I think that's one of the beauty things about like adventure sport, where you rely on natural conditions for what you do. If you want to excel at that, like you need to understand like how the Earth's weather and cycles work.
And you can do all the guesswork and homework, and you still, that day of, the local weather can still shit on it, right?
100%. There's still the X factor.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you just touched on a cool little, the natural cycle, which is what you named your event.
Yeah.
Natural selection. So it's kind of like the big wave surfing. The weather calls the event at the end of the day. You guys are waiting for a beautiful system and the mountain to look just right. And so you're tracking it as much as possible. You guys, how long is your guys' event window for those?
Yeah, so natural selection, we're rolling into our third like full tour season. And like the quick kind of, behind the scenes of where we came, where I guess the genesis of that was, like, we first did a natural selection event in Jackson Hole in 2008. And it was such a, like, I guess, it was so different than what was happening in snowboarding and competition at that time. And we held it on amazing terrain, amazing snow conditions. But still, like, the terrain itself didn't support the progression that I think the athletes were capable of. And so, went back to the drawing board for 5 years, looked for the right place to actually go in and do some like, summer enhancements, then manage the snow all year until the event. And so then we did the supernatural and the ultranatural, which was in Baldface, British Columbia. And that was kind of like the model. That was the true beta test. Always wanted to put together a league. And so stepped back from that for another probably 4 years, did the fourth phase, and then started putting the pieces together for like what is the modern natural selection tour now. So these events, it's kind of the pinnacle of, freestyle free riding. I think that snowboarding as a whole has been headed in this direction since its infancy. It just didn't know it. This is its natural place. This is the natural place it's going.
Well, it's undeniable too, right? It's kind of like big wave surfing, where it's hard to deny a huge wave, and it's hard to deny a huge mountain. And you guys doing a 100-foot gap, going 90 miles an hour. Taking a lifetime of experience and translating that into your like creative expression, or your, the rider's approach on that day. And I think the beauty is like usually the people that stand on the podium with those events are the ones who are able to, find coherence and synchronicity with the mountain and the conditions on that day. And so, the events themselves, we usually do about a week window, trying to get 1 or 2, depending on the event, days of good conditions to ride. And it's a probabilities game, right? And so we put these events on at places that have the highest probability of good running with good conditions, right elevation, the right aspect, so on and so forth. And it's been again, back to the like reckless optimism around just, it's such a complicated thing to do, and you are at the mercy of nature. And I think this is probably similar to like big wave riding. Like it's okay if it fails, as long as you were ready if the conditions presented themselves. Because, with these events, when it works and does come together, it's truly spectacular and has this lightning in a bottle feel.
And again, we're still just in the beginning of what natural
That's
selection
off.
is.
It was very entertaining to watch it just on a little computer screen.
Thanks. Awesome.
So, let's talk about the man that piqued your curiosity of the fourth phase, and Dr. Pollock. I spent a late night going down his rabbit hole and watching a lot of his videos and his TED Talk, and that is an interesting dude. So I'm going to read a quote of what he says. So, what is the fourth phase? What is the fourth phase of water? With an energetic input, water molecules undergo massive change. They become ordered. They acquire a charge. All this energy to create the order comes from light, a battery made from water. Light charges this battery. Light energy, radiant energy, infrared energy. Water absorbs that energy. E equals H2O. You can't separate energy from water. It's a harvest tool? Yes, easy water. Cells are full of easy water. Cells do a type of photosynthesis to harvest this charge. Light penetrates the body. The body is water. Light drives biological processes. So those are all the best nuggets I kind of found from him. There are a couple different speeches, but I took those are kind of the best summaries I can found. But that is an interesting philosophy, and so I could tell it caught your attention. So
I mean, yeah, in like the research, I came across this guy, and if you're looking for a good wormhole to go down, like Gerald Pollack is a great wormhole to go down. His premise for why he went into the physics and science of water is also pretty interesting. He kind of started coming across these outlier problems in water science, and so many people, it's water, it's been around, we understand water, we're working on way more complicated physics problems, like we're on to other shit, like we've established what water is. But what piqued his interest when he was talking about it was that there was these like 12 outliers of things that physics today still doesn't understand about water. Mm-hmm. And through that, his greater philosophy of problem solving and trying to understand, other systems that are, say, maybe perceived as, areas that we think we know everything about, was, he kind of put it in this vein that, too many academics try to solve for the majority of the problems in an equation. Like if, you can get, it works for 98, 99% of the problems. And his approach is more like, if you can solve for the 1%, these outliers that don't fit into the box of what established, science and physics tells you about something, that's going to give you the true answers and insights into what's actually happening. And I thought it was a really fascinating, take. And, he is someone who challenges the status quo. And I think that he's gotten some pushback from the, academia, because he's someone who, kind of stands up and, points out, I think, flaws in the way that, current system works for how grants are given, who gets grants, because a lot of time it comes down to, it takes money to do research.
And they want that ROI on it.
And there's usually committees and boards that are, a part of these bigger academic circles that grant these things. Mm-hmm. And I think he's onto a lot. I mean, we got to visit him, spend a couple days in his lab and got to look at these experiments.
You got your eyes onto this little...
Oh yeah, we went up to, he was in Washington, in Seattle, and we got to go in and check out these experiments that he's doing. And it's super fascinating, his whole approach. But, we, with his blessing, ended up using the name, the fourth phase, which... if you want to go real deep, get the Fourth Phase book by Dr. Pollock. There's some great illustrations, but it's really interesting, the work that he's continued to do, and some of the downstream effects, no pun intended, with everything from like water purification to water as a battery. Like, it's fascinating.
Well, the way you just explained, the one of them that I saw was why does a cloud form? And why does that one cloud form? And it's attracted, like there's the charge, there's a cloud, let's say it's on top of a lake or something, but it'll pull from all directions. And it's like, it's got this crazy charge, and that charge is harvestable now. And it's like, if you can get into it. But I had to watch it a couple times. I was like, wait, what did you say?
Yeah, again, right? Like what we know and what we assume to what like is actually happening in our atmosphere, even.
Yeah.
Differential and like electronic charge.
Let's hold on.
And then, one extra tangent, and we actually almost got into it in the film, but with filmmaking, we have this saying like, you gotta kill babies. And everything from like, we had this whole bit about talking about the flow of like the Columbia, right? And like the dams and all of these other, contaminants that, these waterways are affected by. But at the end, when you're making movies, like you gotta simplify stuff.
Yeah.
It's too easy to go into too many tangents. And so that was like babies we had to kill. And then Dr. Emoto, which I think so many people have heard of, who's a Japanese scientist who's run, a lot of experiments around intention and ice crystals.
Okay. Yes,
right? Yeah, like, putting a love or a hate, like right on a jar and freezing it and seeing what types of patterns, he has some groundbreaking books, and we actually met with, he's passed, but we met with his team in Japan when we were there. And, that's another example of someone who's dipping into the metaphysical, but still using a, kind of Western philosophy, thesis and proof of, you have your control and you have your experiment, right? And his findings are astounding when it gets into.
Sometimes it's magical and it's unexplained.
What's that?
Sometimes it's magical and unexplained.
Yeah.
It's like
water.
Yes. We live and breathe by it. My life revolves around it. We're made of it. It makes sense what he's saying. So it's hats off to you for shining light on that. That was
Yeah, it was a great, and hats off to the whole team that made it, and like Red Bull for literally pouring so many resources into like us making a film about water. And yeah, it was a fantastic 3-4 years of making that movie. It was not easy. It was the toughest film I ever made. It was hard, but
how was that Russia scene?
The Russia scene was that was a heartbreak. Like that was a no joke. Like that's kind of how it went down. Like we spent 5.5 weeks trying to get to this incredible volcanic island in the northern Kuril Islands, where there's literally a volcanic island. Then there's a volcanic lake in the middle of that island, with then a volcano sticking out of this lake on a volcanic island. And we were going down to go, try to ride it and see it. It's just such a crazy, Onekatan is what it's called. Like ONE Ketan, Ketan. Just look up, Google that. Okay. Like Google an image of that. It is such a crazy looking piece of our earth. And so we finally, had the opportunity and a break in the weather. So where we were in Kamchatka, the speed in which high pressures and low pressures like travel over that part of the world in winter is like nothing I've ever experienced. Really? And so, one thing I didn't really understand well before that trip was in how much faster those changes in highs and lows are when you're close to the poles. So let's say, California, because it's easy, right? California in winter when there's actually weather, you'll get these like week-long storm patterns, right? Where it's like you'll get a low pressure for a couple days, and then you get a big 5-day high pressure afterwards. And that's kind of like the pace. Yeah. That's the frequency. That's like the vibratory rate that those storms roll through. So in Kamchatka, that all happens in the period of like 3 to 4 days. And so it would snow 2 to 3 feet, and then you would get a temperature spike. It would finish with rain, and then a high pressure would roll in. It would blow like 100 miles an hour for like 14 hours, and then we would get a high pressure for like half a day. And then that would repeat again. And that pattern, we probably saw that pattern like 10 times while we were there. So it was really hard to like find rhythm when the speed and frequency of the highs and lows that move through there. And so that was why it was so difficult for us to get down to this island chain.
So that just sheds light on that scene where you're like, we're trying to find the snow, and it got blown off somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we were riding these like massive volcanoes down there as well, just because they're so incredibly scenic and gorgeous. And same deal, it would snow 2.5 feet. It would be, terrible avalanche conditions. And then it would get hit by a windstorm, and then you get a high pressure. And I don't think we put it in the film, but I did, like one day we got stable enough weather to go up and ride this volcano. And it was probably the worst run of my life, if I could think of any run ever, because it was like probably 7 to 8 inch deep, like wind cups that were ice, solid ice wind cups on like a 5 to 7,000 foot elevation volcano that was steep as shit. And went up and rode it because we were like
10 minutes of that just fucking.
Oh no, it was like half an hour of like just slow, painful descent. Where if you slip, like you just start sliding. But anyways, frequency of weather up there is impressive.
Insane. So hey, if anybody's listening to this, those big geopolitical, figure your guys shit out so we can get back to that mountain. Let Travis fucking ride that. I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon, or you are.
No, it seems like it's going to be a bit of a stalemate until...
I got a homie we can call after, maybe.
Yeah, that's going to be a slow. I don't see Putin changing much. It's going to be like a whole regime change before relations seem to stabilize there.
Yeah. I don't want to get into politics, so let's totally change gears. I'm gonna fanboy out and let's talk about top of mountain and flow state and energy waves or mind waves and breath waves. And first, let's talk me through. You're sitting on a continental divide. The chopper's left. You got 10 minutes to yourself. What's going through your mind? Are you breathing up? You've already visualized that run. You know exactly what you're going to do. You visualize it. Are you just meditating?
Yeah, I mean, it's the process. Well, and this is something too that I kind of had to figure this out. Like I never got a hack from anybody, and you kind of figured it out over time. But like anything, repetition, you're going to finally try to cue in on what works the best for you. And for line riding specifically, where it's complicated, first comes the homework. Like you've got to do the homework. You have to feel confident that you know where you're going. And a lot of these lines that we ride up, like in Alaska, for example, there's large parts of the line that you can't see from the top.
And rolling over blind.
Yeah, blind rollovers, which a lot of the terrain up there is like that, just due to the glaciation, and glaciers move through the valleys, which then erode the rock down below, and so you have this kind of bulbous shape to mountains, generally speaking. And so it starts with homework. Like, do the homework, know it so well, and some lines will flash, as in like you can show up, you can take a quick look at something and you go up, and it's simple enough that you can then, feel pretty confident about riding it. But flashing stuff, you need to have some experience to do it. But then some lines, it's literally 2 weeks, like 2 weeks of, and looking at photos, looking at whatever resources you can, and memorizing the line itself, because you can't just look and memorize the line that you're taking, you have to also take into consideration like where the hazard areas are, or if you were to cut a pocket, or there was, you know, an instability or something cataclysmic happened, like a deep slab avalanche, like where are your safe points? Like where are you going to go if something happens?
Yep.
And, you know, so you do the research, and the research can be fun too, not to make it, you know, overly scary and dramatic. Like it's fun. You're visualizing. It's like, what do you want to do? How do you want to express yourself on this beautiful piece of terrain? What do you think your skill level, experience, and the snow conditions, like what can you get away with? How far can you push it? And so that's the fun visualization component of it. Once you're up there though, you have to, you know, shift your perceptive, like baseline, because you're used to looking at it from an opposing view. And then when you're up top looking at it, it always looks a little different. And so whatever, once you get all you know, past all of this, you know, like analog, you know, concepting, data. Right? Yeah. The data crunch that our brains are so good at doing. I think that then within lies the attempt to get to a great headspace and, you know, trying to get into, flow state. I think flow is a great term for that headspace that you want to pursue. And, you know, I've found that, you know, at a certain point you need to like let go of the, you know, the busy brain. You've done your research, you know it, you're good. Don't second guess it.
Trained all summer.
Yeah, you've done the research. You know you can do this. Confidence is a huge part.
Yes.
You know, you don't want to go into something like, I don't know if I got it. And then it's breaths. It's like taking a couple minutes to just breathe, to just ground yourself, and like let go of being in brain. Because if you're riding things and you're having to cognitively compute while you're going down it, like you're slow. You can think fast, but it's not as fast as flow. And so if you can get to a place where you can let go of all of the cognitive computing and find space and find a little bit of joy and presence, gratitude, then when you drop in, I find that you're in a much, much better place to react. If something were to happen, you know, you're not busy or distracted thinking about how you should do it.
Yep.
You're in a place of open receiving. And then you're much, much better at reacting. And that's flow. You know, Stephen Kotler wrote a great book on flow. I had several conversations with him for this. The Rise of Superman was the name of the book he wrote. And I think that he did a great job in condensing a lot of very like dense academic research around how the brain works. But the one thing that I feel that book came up short with is, you know, tapping into more of like a metaphysical description of what is happening. Because while yes, the brain is working in unique ways, you know, the wavelengths, like where decisions are being made in the brain, absolutely changes between, you know, the busy, you know, problem solving mind trying to accomplish something versus something that is in that kind of flow state or higher self perspective. And I just think that he, you know, missed the entire, you know, multiple chapters about, you know, approaching it from, you know, your higher self.
Why do you say that? So I had a really interesting conversation when my uncle came over. We weren't recording, it was off the record, and I was telling him about this podcast and the research we're doing, and I want to talk to him about it, and I kind of gave him the premise. And we ended up talking for like an hour about it, but the enlightenment side, what you touched on right there, was that is the breath and everything that is yoga and meditation and enlightening up to a higher level and like a higher mind and breath and meditating. And when you're in that flow, that's actually big wave surfing or surfing in general. I think even it's all relative, whether even if you're a beginner, you're all your focus is. You're not thinking about anything else. But we get to get on that level a lot more often into that state that people are, if you're just you're sitting there on the floor on your pillow trying to meditate and trying to get to that really high level of meditation, that enlightenment, the higher mind. I can't remember. He had the yogi term for it, but it was so interesting, and it's pretty much what you mid-run, probably what's going on in your brain and just reacting. And I read one of your an article about you researching for this, but you call snowboarding as an active meditation. Mm-hmm. And it's, I don't know, I got like, when you're first describing the way, I asked a question about flow state and breathing up and the top of mountain moment before you roll over. I almost got like a surge of adrenaline, and I had to like take a deep breath because I was going back to sitting out in the lineup at Jaws. Mm-hmm. And like, that is the most crazy mind fuck. Sometimes it's different than what you guys are doing, but like, we're trying to position first and foremost for a big wave, and you're trying to stay calm and be ready to react and keep the heart rate down. And like, one of the most, I'm always breathing, just stay calm, stay calm like a bomb is one of my little inner mantras when I'm talking to myself, and just breathe. And like, you'll see a set, you want to either you want it, or you're trying to get away from it, or you're trying to catch it and you sprint, and now you just got this crazy adrenaline dump. And if you missed it, or you just get over the wave, the heart rate is just going freaking crazy. And then you gotta, okay, settle it down again, get ready. You almost gotta recenter, get ready for it again.
Because there's 3 or 5 more.
Yeah, there's going to be another set in 10, 15 minutes. Get ready and find yourself. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't worry about the jet skis buzzing. I was just thinking, like, you're up there by yourself at the top of that mountain. Radio in. Hold on, the camera's not ready. The drones. Let's get the drone in position.
Yeah, well, there's always, that's exactly
You're just like...
Yeah. And I mean, that's like one of the beauties of, snowboarding, that we actually can call the drop, mm-hmm. where surfing, like, the drop calls you. Like, we're able to, I can take a couple breaths and, get ready and be like, hey, is everybody ready? Okay, 10 seconds. And you guys don't have that. You guys don't have that luxury.
Have you ever been stuck up there where, like, for a while, like let's say the cloud rolls in really quick, or the camera just...
Yeah, it's called getting iced out. Absolutely, it happens all the time.
Do you have to walk out?
Well, because
the chopper, or are you going to take another slower run down just to...
I mean, it's happened so many times. Because see, the thing that I think people don't always, fully appreciate or understand is when we're riding like in Alaska or anywhere that's above tree line, mm-hmm. and even beyond that, when we're making movies, like the drab reality without direct sunlight, what we do looks so much less beautiful. The snow textures, and we're in this kind of monochromatic world with snow.
Yeah.
And it's about snow and shadows and the depth perception that comes with being able to read terrain in a white world. Mm-hmm. You need sun. And so the minute the sun goes behind the clouds, like in Alaska, you aren't doing anything because you can't see. There's no depth perception. And so
I've had that happen on the Bunny Hill Mount Bachelor.
Yeah. And so, you need really specific conditions. And so many times, you're so close and you get a little tiny hole that people aren't quite ready, and then done for the day. Then the storm's coming, done for 5 days. It's tricky. You got to be ready. Because if you are ready, at the end of the day, and this is something I found over the years, that like if you are on your shit and you and your team are ready and the sun doesn't break or whatever, like doesn't happen, like I've found the ability to, I can walk away like happy. Like we did our job. We were up there, we were ready, mm-hmm. It didn't come. The killer is like when, the sun's out for, and you're behind the ball and then it goes away. And had you been there ready, you would have got it. Light's so critical. and filming and snowboarding.
Yeah.
Many times we've gotten iced out.
That's a good term.
Yeah.
Some of those GoPro clips where I could just hear you breathing. Like I had a huge one time at Jaws, one of my biggest, scariest, bumpiest ones, and the only thing I remember was my breath was so loud. I took it's probably a 15-second ride, but I was just doing the most loudest inhale, exhales, just. I can't remember the ride, but I remember I could hear my breath the whole time.
Yeah.
Just squeezing my guts,
I know it's tough with snowboarding not to just be like a erratic mouth breather. We've got goggles, and when you're riding, to film, usually you got those goggles pretty cranked, and it actually impacts like the nasal airway quite a bit. And so trying to like be a proper nose breather up in the mountains, it doesn't always work, that like royal breath. I'm not much of a musician, but I do actually quite enjoy the flute. Be it native or whatever.
I'm not laughing at you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. And one of my favorite things was it was in the Marquesas, and I was at this like little pop up like local craft fair, and they were selling nose flutes, and it was the first time I saw like a nose flute. And in conversation, chatting with them, they're like, well, yeah, like the reason that there's nose flutes is it actually was believed by Marquesans that music is divine, music is like holy and sacred, and that the air that comes out of a mouth, human's mouth, that is able to lie, that's able to be hateful, and that it's impure, and so it's not worthy of playing music, which is divine. And so they had nose flute because they felt the air coming out of the nose was worthy of playing music. I always liked that little.
So where's the clip of you top a mountain playing the nose flute in the lotus position?
I don't know. Right here.
Cool. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about Mr. Jeremy Jones and the Purple Mountain movie and climate change and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
We go in a couple different directions. You tell me.
Well, yeah. I think first and foremost, I think it's beautiful what he's set out to accomplish with Protect Our Winters, and trying to, from his perspective, like really take a hard look at, his personal, in the beginning especially, like his personal, impact, and then, the legacy and the future that his children were going to inherit ultimately, right? I think Protect Our Winters has grown through several beautiful iterations, and I am I'm a big supporter of POW, and I think it's beautiful this like incarnation that they've found themselves in now. I think there was a time that they fell into this kind of fear-mongering rhetoric, which is it legitimate? Absolutely. But I don't necessarily know if it's always the best like motivator. And I think the work they're doing now with, really helping to just inform people about voting and the polls. And, they took a real hard look for a number of years, like where is the most impact that we can have towards policy change. Yeah. And, it was education around, what candidates stand for. And so they've done a great job in helping to inform and helping to focus their efforts on, battleground election locations that have the most impact in the bigger picture. And I think it was, I am an imperfect climate activist. Yeah. So are so many.
I've done the audit, my old carbon footprint audit, and it's kind of eye-opening and shocking, right? Sometimes you really look at what you're guilty of.
Yeah, tons of CO2.
Yeah.
But I think the one thing that I think is beautiful with, as they've continued to like peel the onion back, so to speak, through the different iterations of POW and the education that comes with what they do. I mean, they're a world-class, nonprofit, high-impact organization at this point.
Yeah.
And, I think that so much, debate happens in social media, and anyone that brings up, climate components around, like, well, you're a hypocrite. Like, how can you say that when you get on an airplane and travel, or for me, like, get in a heli, go and film. And I think one of the, really interesting components that those guys have done a great job in bringing to life is this incredible campaign that, these same companies that have been behind, tobacco and big oil, and, big pharma around, this legitimate campaign that, millions, if not billions, was spent on, was around trying to pin responsibility onto, the day-to-day, regular Joe. Because if we are, debating like our level of guilt for living our life with the tools and the resources that we have to try to live our life, provide for our families, and find joy, then the conversation stays in this, place of guilt, where when you break down the numbers, so much of the lowest hanging fruit for radical progress comes at like a government level, comes at a large corporation level, and policy really sets the tone for so much of it. So I think they're doing a great job in helping to expose, support, and educate, and empower. And yeah,
that scene where he's having the conversation with the lobbyist is so profound, and the guy's just in one ear out the other, just keeps spitting his speech.
Yeah,
and you just like, oh, we're not getting anywhere. We're never gonna see eye to eye. And you see,
yeah.
It's coming back to the hydrological study and the cycle you ride is, as the outdoor folk that we are, we do have the firsthand knowledge of seeing patterns change, and patterns, I'm sure you've seen it up in the mountains, glaciers changing and stuff. But I think the funny part, to play complete devil's advocate and stand next to that petro lobbyist, what we're kind of almost talking about earlier is like the time scale and the infinity scale of change on this planet is, I think, sometimes beyond our comprehension. I just wonder what is the pattern changing? Is it really warming? Are we going through the big warming page? It's just besides us, and the Earth is going to shake us off one day. I do think we're changing it, and we're having an effect, and we're poisoning a lot of different things and killing a lot of things. That's undoubtable. Humans have an impact, right?
And I mean, why we can't all get on, one side of, there's a common ground here, which I stay continuously frustrated it isn't more addressed. Okay, let's take the standpoint, look at it through the view of okay, humans are not causing at all climate change. Right? We'll just look at it through that vantage point, which isn't the case. But the reality that these old technologies of burning fossil fuels, we're just making ourselves sick. The pollution in its own right, polluting and toxifying our air, our water, our soil. And I think that the impact that our exposure, and what is deemed safe exposure to, all of these, cancer-causing chemicals, that alone should be reason for trying to get off, oil, trying to get off, these old technology ways of creating power. I mean, why we can't just unify underneath that banner, that there is a cleaner way to do this, is frustrating.
I fight the fight constantly. I still run into people with poo-poo solar panels. I know it's not the perfect solution, but it's a step.
It's a step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction.
Because you got to take that step to get to the next step.
Are you just going to be stuck over here? Or should we at least try to make progress forward to a better goal?
Yeah.
I think, and like, I started telling you about that. The bill that we just had to fight tooth and nail to keep our industry here in Hawaii, Special Bill 2510, the biogas and petroleum industry really wanted to shut it. They effectively did, and it took the governor's veto to turn to.
Which is a crazy story. I mean,
and they're using just old FUD, old data. Like, it's one of the reasons why I love the solar industry in general. We call it the roller coaster, but it's so dynamic. It's cutting edge tech, and there's software and all these little components that managing that energy and the battery, the new place that batteries have in that equation now is just super interesting to me. And then I'm going to keep fighting that fight as long as I can. That's kind of why we're here. This is marketing in general for that fight.
Yeah. And, the big picture of it is, like we could sit here and probably come up with like a list of 20 things of like why lithium batteries are bad and why, solar panels use, all these like, heavy earth elements to make.
I take a diesel truck to the job site and we have a pile of trash after the job site. And
but all said and done, like you have to take that next progressive step to get to that. We're not going to get beyond lithium until we, embrace electric, and then get into the nitty gritty of like, okay, so like what's not working? What are these big inefficiencies in like lithium technology? What's the next thing?
Progression.
And for me with
evolution of it.
Absolutely, and for me with with like making these films and like my personal carbon footprint, and as a consumer myself, there is negative impacts that I have in the big picture with, the energy conversation. However, it's my belief that trying to bring educational messaging through the projects and films that we do.
The net positive is there.
There is a net positive, and that's like our ultimate goal. And, there's ways to do it. Like, I think the natural selection is a great example of.
You got some cool partners on that event.
Dude, we got some amazing partners, and our like natural selection's baseline is offset what we use and then do a drawdown event to double our carbon footprint. So we essentially are offsetting twice what we use. We're still using it, right? But we feel like that should at least be like standard operating procedure, and it does not cost that much money.
We have a film festival here. COVID shut it down for last year's, but we were able to do a small solar system, and it was a net meter system. And the county and the utility let us do it, but the thing runs year round just to offset their 1 week energy. It's pretty rad. Like it's I'm sure. We could probably sit here for hours, right, and just talk about all the cool projects, but that are coming and all the new technologies. I'll just touch on two that I'm really excited about. Yeti is our sustainable primary that other cup
partner.
Switch.
Yeti gets it. Yeti likes to see any reusable mug being used out there. But
shame on me.
Tri Alpha Energies, this company called TAE that for 20 years has been working on the kind of the holy grail of energy, cold fusion. And they're a company out of California, and they're actually the only company that's trying to solve the challenge of cold fusion using a clean source of energy, boron. All of the other projects that are being done are still using high radiation, heavy metal fuel. Boron is found in the ocean. There's enough boron, in the world's oceans. It's in the supply, so to speak. And companies like that we're really proud to be partners with. I'm also good friends with this guy, Hayes Barnard, who, he's got this beautiful company called, what was the I love that you can edit this, but.
Okay, go for it. Should we Google it real quick?
What's that?
When we Google it real quick?
No, I got it.
Hayes Barnard has a company, his energy company. I'm trying to cue you.
No, I got this. Well, because there's two pieces of it. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, another one I'm a huge fan of. There's a gentleman named Hayes Barnard who actually was at one point with Solar City, and then started a company which is now called GoodLeap.
Yep.
And GoodLeap, it's one of the leading home solar loan companies.
Yep. Financers, I've heard of him.
Awesome company, such a great guy. Just authentically just trying to change the world. And he's got this kind of, their nonprofit is called Give Power.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'll make sure I have all these links down in the show notes. So
yeah, and so Give Power basically is building these kind of prefab solar power generation stations that are tasked with not just energy creation but also clean water.
Yep.
And they've been and they can do their large solar buildings can provide clean drinking water for 35,000 people a day.
Wow.
And they've been putting these up in Africa and a few other impoverished areas.
And you had these at your event, or how you just connected to them?
I'm actually
Just promoting it?
Just to promote it because I'm a fan of this guy Hayes and that whole, just better ways. I think he was fundamentally one of the first guys who figured out how to do solar loans, home solar loans.
Yeah.
Because why
Probably
not?
had a big tax bill. That's the derivative of most of the solar financing. There's usually a big tax fund behind it they're looking for. The tax credits make everything. But come back, it's a net positive, and it makes sense. It's an application and an avenue for certain people. Do you want solar power, or do you want a reduction on your bill?
Yeah.
It ticks a positive big old box for a lot of people. So
yeah. Well, and
I've sold a lot of solar finance.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, and you roll through life, right? And and this is nothing new conceptually, but again, as a consumer, we all have so much more power than we think we do with how you spend every dollar, what brands you support, what companies do you choose to spend your money at in all aspects.
Yeah.
And that has a ton of impact.
There's a lot of different ways to put your personal energy and what you want to. There's an impact. You could just throw the wrapper out the window, put it in the recycle.
Constant choices.
There's so many little micro decisions to be made, and it comes back to that net positive. So,
which is back to be mindful.
Yes.
It's tough day in day out, but be mindful because every little decision you make, it has impact.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I wish those guys well. Okay, I'll give them a support. Let's talk a little bit about we got to go quickly through these ones before we get back to down to the core question. There's actually one really good one, but energy conversions and ripples in the pond, inputs and outputs, and we can go quickly through them. And training for you, big part. What you put into the gym, what you get out in the field, the practice field. That whole I've trained with you enough sessions now that you're giving it 100%, which is
which I appreciate coming from a guy who gives 105%.
It's fun. It's addicting. I don't know. That gym is it's such an amazing collective energy, stepping into that, you could feel the charge of everybody has a very similar goal. It's positive, and I urge anybody to find a crew that will push you and challenge you, that especially on a training level, exercise, whether it's running or hiking or the gym and that. So Sam has curated a really cool space down there. So yeah, I love it. So it's addicting.
Yeah, amen, man. I mean, yeah, like anything, right? Like, be prepared.
Yeah.
And I think, you do something for a long period of time, and you start to understand that, like, when it comes to those, like, pivotal days, like, that's where it all pays off.
Yeah.
And being prepared. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest differences you see between, like, veterans and, like, up and coming, like, youth, where it's raw talent, and on the other end spectrum, it's experience.
I just sent one of my little homies that's training. He's 18 and has big goals and he's super talented. But I just sent him a podcast of Kobe, and his work ethic was, like, obviously legendary. I was like, raw talent plus outworking everybody and being prepared for those games is real. So
don't cut corners.
Second one, trends. You're an influencer. It's undeniable that, being the athlete and that you are. How does it feel when you, like, whether you stomp a trick or you wear a jacket, the next thing you know, you're seeing somebody, like, you're moving product, or the kids are stomping that trick the next day on Instagram because you just did it. What's that feel like? Because that's a ripple. You're sending waves through culture, through society as an influencer.
I mean, that's probably one of the most rewarding parts of what I do, and having someone who you can tell is authentic with their, gratitude of a moment that resonated with them. Or I think, my favorite one is when, someone comes up to you and talks about how, I watched the Art of Flight film, and, like, I decided to follow my, dreams, or, I changed my life in a certain way and I'm in a better place, like, because of it. Those are the heavy ones that stick with you and further motivate you to do good. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's do good, and like the ripple effect that you're talking about. I think there's a lot of ways to make ripples, right? But on a daily basis, like, one of the lowest hanging fruits again is, like, be kind, be helpful, and, like, give compliments.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many of us, myself included, we walk around this, confusing and often very intimidating, social world, not very sure of ourselves, filled with doubts, and being able to, extend a compliment, as simple of a compliment, or, you see someone doing something, like, acknowledge it, just acknowledgement. And that has mega ripples.
It does.
Because that is something that it gets paid forward. And it's so easy to do. Such minimal effort.
That's a good one.
That's a ripple maker.
Do you see it when, like, your event, right? Which is, the humble man hasn't mentioned, but you smoked the kids this last year, became the champ of your own tour. But you're also giving the platform for the younger kids coming up. And they're sticking your signature trick at 18 on your course.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, snowboarding's given me so much, so much of, I guess, the identity that I've created for myself, and my global outlook and perspective, being informed from being able to immerse myself in so many different cultures and different idea makers around the world, so on and so forth. I'm just grateful, and I'm grateful for the people that worked hard to bring snowboarding to where it was when I came up in it. And I think that not just for myself, for really, like, a large part of the team that works in natural selection as well, but being able to, like, leave it better than you found it. And I think that goes,
across the board,
an echelon above, where it's like, any relationship, like any relationship that you're in is with yourself, a romantic partner, parents, like your goal should be to leave it better than you found it. And there are many ways to do that. Even in the situation of like a romantic relationship falling apart, there are ways to leave something better than you found it. And for me, snowboarding and the heavy lift, it is a natural selection. Sure, it's a passion play. I love it. It's something that I wish was around when I was younger. But, at least getting as far as we have, like at this point, it's changed, right? People can't unsee what they've seen the past years with this. And we're going to do our best to continue to give a platform for people to creatively express themselves.
Bitchin', man. Keep making those ripples.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I got a cool question. So I called up Kyle Lenny yesterday. I told him I'm sitting down.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I was like, got anything you want me to ask? Like, what should I ask this man? And he came right back. He's like, hell yeah. So compare big wave surfing and big mountain riding. It's kind of a three-part question. So what influence do you see transcending across those two disciplines? And then the other one's more of a personal question is, do you think with your skill set and big mountain riding, I think is way more exposure. It's faster. You're hitting gaps that are way longer than his airs. This is coming from him. Me personally, I think it's way more dangerous. You guys are going down with avalanches and cliffs and rocks and ice and things that really can do. We're getting mowed by water, then we'll probably float to the surface, and you got to get through that 30 to a minute time period. So with those speeds, how fast do you think you could stick your signature trick? Like, if you gave the commitment, could you do it quickly, stomp your signature trick at extra large jaws? Like Kai's trying to ride big waves like you're riding big mountains.
Yeah,
so
which it's been nuts watching his like yearly progression, right? So I'll start with I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful parallel, big wave riding and big mountain riding. And one of the coolest components of it is that I think any big wave surfer that you ask which is gnarlier, I seem to hear without a doubt that they think big mountain riding is gnarlier. Now, if you were to ask all of the big mountain riders which is gnarlier, I would say that the vast majority will say that the big wave riding is gnarlier.
Hold that. Why?
Well, that's just it, because it's two different approaches. Both are very zen and gladiatorial. Well, that's a word, gladiatorness.
My mom would challenge you in Scrabble on that.
I'm sure it's not a
challenge.
Word. Can we make gladiator a verb? That's just all I want to do. So there's a few things going on, right? Big mountain riding, I think most of us who go and do that, right, we set up and you try to tick all of the boxes within, the last thing we're trying to do is put ourselves in a position where we're getting in an avalanche, right? The avalanche is the vast minority of possible outcomes when we drop into that. And then on top of that, if you're doing it right, there's ways of mitigating the impact of if we were to get in an avalanche, right? So terrain selection is a big term that we use. And what that has to do is, are you selecting terrain that if the worst case scenario occurs, you are still going to be able to survive getting swept in an avalanche? And what that means is there a big fanned out exit for where the snow would go? So let's say I get in an avalanche, I get swept down 500 feet, there's not secondary cliff exposure, and all of that snow is going to fan out and only be a couple feet deep. That's the ideal terrain selection, right, that we're doing with big mountain riding. To that extent, I think we, being the big mountain riders, we look at what happens at Jaws, and especially when it's like a paddle in situation where, the more I talk with you guys, with Kai, with Ian, and you have to put yourself in harm's way to be in position. You don't know. It's the unknown that's so ballsy in big wave surfing, because you have to sit deep enough to take off, and you don't know if there's going to be a cleanup set that's going to just come and roll you guys. You guys are prepared every day that you go out to take a big set on the head, right?
Yes, 100%.
And I would argue that a lot of the big mountain riders, when we go out, like, we're not ready to take an avalanche. Like, we are not, it's this like super minority type of thing, right? Does it happen? Yes. If you were to compare, avalanche to big wave hold down, like, that's a different conversation. Statistically, once
a winner,
the abuse that one takes in an avalanche. I mean, the majority of people that die in avalanches, it's because of trauma, not because of asphyxiation. Mm-hmm. So if we were comparing a big wave hold down to an avalanche, then yeah, avalanches are gnarlier. But when you look at it holistically, from big wave riders going out to do what they do to big mountain riders going out to do what they do, I'm not standing on the ridge knowing that, every set that comes, I might be taking one on the head. And that's why I think that it's a little more gladiatorial to sit there helplessly on a board with a little bit of flotation, in paddle and big wave surfing. That's my opinion. And
that makes sense.
As far as where's it going? I think it's naive to not think that the technical freestyle components are going to continue to make their way into that type of medium.
I'm actually really excited to see what Kai does this winter, because he's been training hard on his aerial skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, the last I think 3 or 4 years, every time I see someone in snowboarding do a rippy flip, which is basically like a frontside 720 flip. Because for me, that's always like being strapped to a board. It seems like the sweet trick that is doable and repeatable.
Yeah.
I send him a DM him every single time I see someone do a rippy flip on a snowboard. And
so you're starting that ripple.
Well, no, I see what I've witnessed in person a few times, him out at Jaws, and his approach and his tenacity for bringing those tricks and strap surfing into that components. I mean, are you going to is someone going to be double corking back into transition in big wave? I think it's possible. Never underestimate. People are doing flips, right? People are doing spins. What's next? Where does it go? And what's super gnarly for me about doing tricks, especially big tricks on waves, and I've tried to do airs on waves, small airs, and it is landing on fucking hard pack. I have cushion when I land in snow, and you guys have this huge surface area board that does not, when you're going fast, that water surface is rock hard. And so it's straight to knees and ankles. It's so brutal, big aerial surfing.
Have you seen Albie limping around with his hip?
That's what I'm saying. Seeing just, what happened with John and a bunch of other surfers, right? It's big aerial surfing. It's freaking brutal. Transition is everything. For me, that's I'm still ripping because I have become a student of transition, and I seek out good tranny. I'm not trying to land flat anymore. But I think that, and I'm excited to see what happens in switch surfing, whether people are riding twin surfboards or if they're, hopping back and forth, like this year, seeing people take off, switch into the barrel and then come out, going forward, I don't know. It's really interesting where it's going to go. Snowboarding, I think that bringing freestyle to Big Mountain is such an open-ended, it's pretty unbridled what the limitations of that are. And that's exciting, really exciting for what the natural selection is and the multitude of possibilities around the world with different venues and different snow conditions. Like it's almost limitless of what can progress. And that's an exciting place to be in, because when we were riding half pipe and seeing what the pipe riders and what the park riders are doing now and how acrobatic it's gotten, respect to human performance. It's incredible. But, you start to play in such a finite world of an add one model where you have to do an extra 180 or an extra flip to beat what was winning the previous year, that you start to reduce the interest level in the youth that know that, like, okay, I have to train like a gymnast now if I want to be competitive. Like, that's not why I want to snowboard.
Because your guys' comp, we're kind of getting away from the question, but your guys' comp, you have to have a degree of style.
Yeah, style still, and I'm sure that surfing's the same way, right? Like, style is still going to be.
You have to. When my uncle's comp gets back up in bed, you got to come to that one. The Jerry Lopez big wave.
Oh, amen.
Because who was it? It was Lion Farrell, and he came up there with us and did it. And he's like, "Oh, I got to slow my spin down and be steezy." Because he comes from the big one trick, big air competition. And he's like, oh, it's all about style. And so he's just trying to bump it out as far as possible, as slow as possible.
Yeah, I mean, big shout out to Lion. Like, when you start to look at, ultimate, like who's the best all around board athlete? Foil, surf, skate, snow. I feel like Lion's got to be
He's in there
on the short list.
I think he might be, and he's got the genes, the big wave genes with him from his parents, from Campbell and Angela, the water gene as well. But I see him doing something pretty amazing on a strap board on a big wave and doing a freestyle big air. So.
Yeah, being strapped, I'd actually never really done it. And I actually hopped on Kai's board last year and just got to feel what that was like on a skinny board, lightweight, not one of those crazy heavy like toe boards that you guys do on big rugged wind torn waves. And this is the first time that it's ever really purely felt like snowboarding.
There was a guy that actually, I think it might have even been Laird. Ordonez was actually telling me about it back in the day. They're making flex boards.
Wow.
Just for going at speed to hit the chop.
Well, I mean, that's super interesting. Actually, you saying that as well. The snowboard that I ride,
I've got ride a mountain on it or a moving wave on it, for sure.
Well, what I was going to say was, like, I always talk about how the tail and my nose of my snowboarders are my second knee. Like, I can land flat as shit because I can utilize the flex matrix that's in the nose and tail of those boards. And, whatever, it makes me instantly think about just, flat landings when guys are, boosting out into the flats and just eating it. Into the knees. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some type of flex pattern in a surfboard that could help soften those impacts. Even a deck that is a little bit spongy or something, because it just sucks to see people get injured, Yeah.
So I'm not letting you get away. To answer that question, could you do it?
I'm going to say, no, I couldn't do like a pinnacle trick and land it. I might be able to, could I get towed in on the right wave to Jaws or something? Yeah, I probably could, I've even been offered, but I actually stepped back because there was like a respect component where I was like, dude, you can't step into that you can't like shortcut that type of situation without being fully prepared for the consequences if you fall.
Yep.
And I've felt that a few times. Like I've taken some mega poundings at Chopu. Big shout out to Raymana for, being psyched and putting me into.
Chopu has teeth. I think those repasses are gnarlier than Jaws.
Dude, and I don't know. I have a level of respect. Like, okay, yeah, if I wanted to actually go, with one of these boys and go toe into a Jaws wave, like, okay, but I 2-3 months minimum training and just, you got to be prepared for the consequences.
Okay. If you did a winter out here,
you got to respect it.
If you did a winter, we lived and breathed Jaws. Come February, March, here comes the super west well. There's a big 15-foot west bowl. Double cork.
Could I get the double cork around? Yes. Could I land it? No fucking way. No way.
Okay.
Because to land a big trick like that, you have to hit critical training. And I don't see myself having the skill set that it takes to land. Like, can I chuck? Sure, I'm good at chucking. I'm
good at doing airs out back waves. I can't land.
But landing in tranny, and that's what's going to
moving tranny.
Well, that's what's going to be crazy when not if when like big airs. Who's going to do a 15-foot air on like a big wave? Mm-hmm. It's probably going to happen. Someone's probably going to hit tranny, but the skill level it's going to take to not only re-entry into tranny, but be prepared for the impact that happens at that. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen, like for example, and whatever, these are just things I've learned, but the jump out of the heli onto the wave. Mm-hmm. Like I've seen multiple failures of people trying to, and I'm always like, dude, you gotta overtake the wave. You can't be hovering in a helicopter and have a wave come underneath you, jump out and try to land on the face. Like the physics don't work. The only way it works, you have to overtake it. So the heli has to follow the wave in. You have to be traveling just a little faster than the wave, and you have to jump before you're over the wave so that you land into the tranny without impact. Mm-hmm. Not to mention you have rotor wash that's going to probably just rip the board out of your feet anyways. But still, you see people do it, right? You see people try it.
Did you hear about the new format they're doing for the Pipeline Masters this year? So they're combining two, right? And they invited a bunch of air guys because they want to see guys doing huge airs after the tube.
Okay. The combo. Come out and go blast.
Yeah. They're given points for that.
Damn. So, and that's going to be like for the main event?
Yeah, it's invite only. It's not.
Okay, so it's a specialty event.
It's a specialty event. It's not a CT contest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But John and Miola and there's a couple guys. They're CT guys and wild cards and Hawaiians.
Well, I was, because like how much softer is it when you land like in a whitewater? Like, is there cushion?
The wrong guy, but I think from what I've been told from like the older guys, like if you do it just right.
Yeah, you don't land when
it lands you right down. It's just like, if you grease it, you're really greasing it.
Yeah.
But it's
the only time I see like a soft landing is when someone lands in a good like white, but even that moment when the whitewater's right, it's just a fraction.
It's also a trench before and a flat landing right after if you really miss it.
Anyways,
okay.
Yeah.
So we've been talking quite a bit, and I think we've already answered the question, but you're very tuned into these cycles and vibrations and conversions of energy. But what is a unique conversion of energy in your life, or what's one that's really important to you? I guess, and to sum it all up, that we've been.
Well, I think a great when you say conversion of energy, manifestation. Like manifestation is something that I've been playing with and practicing with and utilizing for the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think that it's had a huge, profound effect in the process, really the process in which how I go about, whether it's making a film, mm-hmm. whether it's improving my relationship, whether it's creating a product, whether it's trying to manifest great conditions for a snowboarding event. Manifestation is something that for me has been a learning process in how to use this incredible tool that I was never taught that we had. Each and every one of us has the ability to manifest. I mean, we do it whether cognitively aware of it or not all the time. And I think, my learnings of how to utilize manifestation, there's 3 parts to it. There's visualization, there's unfoundering belief that what you are manifesting will come true. And the key ingredient is the emotional side of feeling. There has to be an emotional connection, feeling of what does that feel like? Because without the feeling component, it's just heady. It's just this okay, I'm gonna visualize this thing and I believe in it, but it's still up here. You have to bring the emotional component of feeling into manifestation to properly do it.
Think it, feel it, do it.
Yeah, and for me, I think a big, thing that I've changed the way that I, quote unquote manifest over the years is I've started to let go about how every step of the process has to take place. Because, I'm a bit of a control freak. You have to be, or at least I felt like you had to be to, do these films or create these products. You had to really every step of the way, you're constantly steering the ship and, that's wrong, that's out of place, and God, it took so much energy. And I've started to, manifest in a different way where I've started to let go of micromanaging the process. And what I've come to realize is, there's actually a lot of ways to get from point A to point B. You think you know the best path. And that's why, for me, when I, overanalyze every step of the way, it's because I think that I know the best way. But there's actually many ways to get from point A to B, and often there's ways that you haven't, considered, or easier ways that are too perfectly convenient that you haven't considered. And so I've started to actually step back in how much I micromanage trying to get from point A to point B. Put it out there and manifest, and then I'm in a better place to allow for, other ways of getting and reaching my goals from how I think every step of the process has to be done. And that's been kind of a radical shift for my peace of mind, going about things, trusting other team members, trusting other people to help, realize the vision, and manifestation, and not taking such a stranglehold of how every step has to work out.
That was beautiful, man. That's a great way to end this. So awesome. Thank you, dude. That was a cool conversation. So,
I couldn't agree more. Dude. I'm sure we could keep it going.
You can talk all day, but I know you got a family to get to. But thank you very much. So.
Amen, man. Buoy Report, love it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We're offline.